Buenos dias, my good people. Welcome to Morning Bible Drive podcast with Pearl, where I share my morning devotion with you guys with hopes to inspire you to read the Bible. This morning, I read 2 Kings chapter 8. As usual, it's always a roller coaster with these stories. It's always a roller coaster. But let's get into it. Now, chapter 8 of 2 Kings has 4 stories. I'm going to touch a bit on each story. I was more so intrigued by the last 3 stories, and I will tell you why. It has a bit of history. If you have been following this series from the time I was posting these devotionals on my WhatsApp stories or my WhatsApp statuses, then you will know the history I'm referring to. But if you have not, then I will refer to you the chapters that I've read before so that you can go and check those out as well. We're going to start with a nice story. The first story is beautiful. The other story is kuningi. Now, the first story is the Shunammite's land restored. This one still has a bit of history. Now, remember that Shunammite woman whose son Elisha restored to life? Yes, the well-to-do or the well-off woman who had built a lounge for Elisha for whenever he was in town. Yeah. Now, Elisha had told this woman to go away with her family and stay away for a while wherever she can, because the Lord had decreed a famine in the land that would last 7 years. So this woman and her family moved to the land of the Philistines for 7 years. Now, when the 7 years of famine had elapsed, the woman returned back to Israel, right? And she went to the king to beg for her house and her land back. Now, God works in amazingly mysterious ways. As she was making her way back, and as she was making her way to the king to beg for her land and her possessions back, the king was having a conversation with Gehazi. If you remember Gehazi is the servant of Elisha who was smitten with leprosy because of his greed, right? I don't know if Gehazi had healed of leprosy. Now, for those who listened to yesterday's sharing, we talked about the 4 lepers who had intended to surrender to the Aramean camp because Samaria was enveloped with famine, right? And they had, made a resolved decision or a resolute decision to go to the Aramean camp and surrender and plead for mercy, and whatever happens will happen. If the Aramean armies decide to kill them, it is what it is. They were going to die anyway. Remember those 4 lepers who then found the Aramean camp abandoned and found plunder, which they told the king about, and the famine ended. Remember how the lepers had said it is not good for them to gather for themselves, and then they decided to go tell the king that the Aramean soldiers had abandoned their camp and there's food and supplies and gold and silver and so on and so forth. Now, I was watching a sermon by Pastor Doug where he was supposing that could one of the 4 lepers, could one of them had been, I feel like I'm slaughtering English here, guys, bear with me. But he was supposing if, could one of the lepers have been Gehazi? Hence the caution for them not to be greedy. Because here in chapter 8, we see Gehazi talking to the king of Israel. And if Gehazi was still a leper, then he wouldn't be able to be, conversing or interacting with the king or anyone who was in leprosy, because leprosy was a very contagious skin disease. So can we safely assume that one of the lepers was Gehazi, and that because of the four lepers' good gesture to not be greedy, to let the king of Israel know that the Arameans had abandoned supplies and basically plunder, could we safely assume that God restored them to health for that? Could we safely assume that God rewarded these four lepers by restoring their health? And maybe, just maybe one of those four lepers was Gehazi. Hence, Gehazi's ability now to converse and interact with the king of Israel. Food for thought, guys. So as Gehazi was conversing with the king of Israel, and the king of Israel wanted to know all these amazing things that Elisha had been up to, and Gehazi was telling the king of Israel that Elisha restored someone to life. And as he was going on and on about this story, the Shunammite woman approaches the king, and as she approaches the king, Gehazi's like, yeah, this woman's son is the one that Elisha resurrected. And the king was so impressed that he basically restored everything back to the Shunammite. And he said, listen, please give this woman her land, her possessions, everything that belonged to her is hers. Because what a woman, what a story. Beautiful in 2 Kings chapter 8. This is where the beauty ends. From then on, malarkey, ladies and gentlemen. So, the next story is Hazael murders Ben-Hadad. Again, if you remember, Ben-Hadad is the king of Aram, whom Ahab was supposed to kill. But because Ahab did not kill him, God killed Ahab instead. Right. Now, Ben-Hadad fell ill. And then he sends his servant Hazael to Elisha to go inquire if he will in fact recover from his illness. He says, I want to read it. Take a gift with you and go meet the men of God. Consult the Lord through him. Ask him, will I recover from this illness? And then when Hazael meets Elisha, he says to him, which threw me off for a second. He says, your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to ask, will you recover from this illness? I said, Ben-Hadad, also listen, Elisha. Weren't you trying to kidnap him a few chapters ago? Weren't you trying to kidnap him a few chapters ago because he was busy telling the king of Israel your bedroom business? He's now your son. Wait, what? Wait, Elisha is now your father. I would hate to know how you treat your biological father. Honestly, I would hate to know how you actually treat your biological father. I'm scared. Scary business. Yeah. So, pardon my nasal situation here. Allergies, guys. And so Elisha does the most striking thing. Elisha tells Hazael that go tell the king you will certainly recover, but the Lord has revealed to me that he will in fact die. And then the Bible says in verse 11, he stared at him. This is Elisha staring at Hazael. He stared at him with a fixed gaze until Hazael felt ashamed. Then the man of God began to weep. Can you imagine being Hazael in that moment? When I read this, me too, I was like, what's going on? Is this an intimidation tactic? What's going on? And then you're weeping. Are you trying to mess with Hazael's mind? Are you trying to mess with him? And then the Bible gives us clarity on what's actually going on here. So Hazael asks Elisha, my Lord, why are you weeping? And then Elisha is like, because I know the harm you will do to Israel. You will set fire on their fortified places, kill their young men with the sword, dash their little children to the ground, and rip open their pregnant women. Talk about ominous. What? Foretelling? Ominous reading. Okay, no. An ominous prophecy. Talk about an ominous prophecy. And so Hazael, remember Hazael at this time, he is the servant of King Ben-Hadad, king of Aram. So Hazael is asking, how could your servant, a mere dog, accomplish such a feat? And then Elisha is like, the Lord has shown me that you will become the king of Aram. I said, hold the microphone. Let's flip our Bibles back to 1 Kings chapter 19. Remember Elijah, after he sees God in heaven, and God tells him that he's going to be succeeded by Elisha. Remember what else God says to Elijah? He says, when you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. So Hazael was the anointed king, anointed by Elijah. This is the same king now. This is the same king now who is a servant in this interaction between himself and Elisha. I don't know if the following actions were prompted by the revelation given to Hazael that he's going to be king. But also I wondered to myself, if Elijah anointed Hazael king, then surely he should have known this entire time before Elisha told him that he was going to be king. Right? Unless I'm not understanding something here. So Hazael goes home, tells Ben-Hadad that he is going to recover. And then the next morning, the Bible says he took a thick cloth, soaked it in water, spread it over the king's face so that he died. So, well and truly, the illness is not what was going to take Ben-Hadad out. Hazael is what was going to take Ben-Hadad out. So Hazael kills Ben-Hadad and then he becomes king. Fine. Then the next story, sadder than the first one. Sadder than the first one. Than the one I just read. We are introduced to Jehoram, king of Judah. Jehoram was the son of Jehoshaphat. Jehoshaphat was a good king of Judah. He walked in the ways of the Lord. His father was Asa, who was also a good king of Judah, who walked in the ways of the Lord, who removed the Asherah poles and the altars of Baal from Judah, who even demoted his grandmother, who was the queen mother, and destroyed her prostitute shrines. Like, Asa was an amazing king, and so was his son Jehoshaphat. But Jehoram did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and he walked in the ways of Ahab. Guess why? Guess why he walked in the ways of Ahab? Because he married Ahab's daughter. Now, when I read this, I said, Jehoshaphat, you were a good man. You were a good man, Jehoshaphat. He was a good man, Savannah. His problem is he was too soft. Here's why. When Ahab wanted to fight Ben-Hadad, remember who he enlisted. Remember whose help he enlisted? Jehoshaphat's. And Jehoshaphat was like, we are one, you are my brother. Let's inquire of the Lord first. And when I read that in 1 Kings, I said, Jehoshaphat, you know where the danger is. You know where the danger is. This your alliance with Ahab, an evil king who is married Jezebel, a wicked woman. Jehoshaphat, my son, you are a good man. He's a good man, Savannah. But he's aligning and associating himself with evil men. Right? And then when Ahab died, his next son, I forgot who, I think it was Joram. Yeah. Once again, Jehoshaphat when Joram enlisted the help of Jehoshaphat, Jehoshaphat was like, "You are my brother, we are one." I said, "Jehoshaphat, my son, Jehoshaphat. How many times shall I call you Jehoshaphat? What are you doing?" And because he kept associating himself with Ahab and his wicked sons, he allowed his own son, Jehoram, to marry Ahab's daughter. And now Jehoram, because of his wife, he walked in the ways of Ahab, his evil father-in-law. Fine. But I like what verse 19 says. "Nevertheless, for the sake of his servant David, the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah. He had promised to maintain a lamb for David and his descendants forever." So regardless of Jehoram's evil ways, the Lord still maintained the promise he made to David, even in his posterity. And I said, wow, if God can keep a promise to David in his posterity, David is dead. He's not seeing the fruition, the promise, the sustenance of the promise, rather. He's not seeing it, but God is still keeping it because he's faithful. And worse, the descendants of David barely get it right. Most of them are always walking in wicked ways. Most of them are always doing horrendous evil things, and most of them are idolaters, right? But God is still keeping his promise. I said, then what would stop God from keeping the promises he's made to me? On a serious note, what would stop God from keeping the promises he's made to me? You know? And then Jehoram dies. He's succeeded by his son Ahaziah, who was also wicked because his mother is the daughter of Ahab. How could he not be wicked? Honestly, how could he not be wicked? And then now we are also shown that Ahaziah, together with Joram, the son of Ahab, went to war against Hazael, king of Aram. And I said, three of these men are wicked. So, Malaki, Anaki. Honestly, I said Malarkey. I said Anarchy. I said, what a mess. I said, what a mess. What a conglomeration of wicked men doing wicked deeds. And also what I found striking about Ahaziah and Joram's union is, Joram is Ahaziah's uncle at this point, so why would they not be united? Like, at this point, the house of Judah and the house of Israel are related by blood. It's an alliance. I mean, you know, it's unfortunately it's an alliance of wicked men, you know. So that is what I learned in 2 Kings chapter 8. I hope you took a few things here and there from that reading, and I hope you guys have an amazing, awesome morning, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Adios.